Hey there, Scott here from SocialNRG Presents, and thanks for joining us for this episode we're sure you'll love, because if you love all things rock and roll, stay tuned for this one. Our guest today is Mike Fraser, an internationally acclaimed music producer, recording engineer, and mixer who's helped shape the careers and sounds of some of rock's most iconic bands.
Yeah!
The list of acts he's worked with in the studio is literally a who's who of rock royalty, and they include AC/DC, Aerosmith, Bryan Adams, Metallica, Loverboy, Motley Crue, Van Halen, and literally dozens and dozens of others. And today, Mike joins us from his home in Langley, British Columbia for an intimate look at his career and to bring us up to speed on what he's been working on next. So sit back, relax, get ready, as SocialNRG now presents you with your Backstage Pass.
I want to get right off, because me and you know a ton of people together, but I want to go back, and me and you have met a few times in social circles and stuff. But where I know anybody who knows of your work knows that you're based in Vancouver, but where were you actually born and raised?
I was born in Burnaby.
Okay.
And most of my life raised out here. I live in Langley, which is 45 minutes outside of Vancouver. So
yeah, and Burnaby's Burnaby's a suburb of Vancouver. You know. Yeah. It's basically the Boundary Road. Boundary Road is you cross Boundary Road, you're in Burnaby. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So
Murder of Crows, and you're in Vancouver.
Right. Whereabouts in Burnaby?
Well, I was born at Grace Hospital. Grew up our first few years of my life, I guess, was in Victory Street in Imperial.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know that area really well.
I would have gone to Burnaby South if I stayed in school.
That's sort of where Tommy Stewart was raised.
Oh, okay.
From Chipper, yeah. And his dad was the chief of police of Vancouver.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Remember that? Yeah.
That's cool. So I gotta go. So you talk about school. What was school like for you? Were you a good student? Did you care?
I was an A student right through probably grade 8, and then discovered music, girls, drinking, all that stuff. And I quit school towards the end of grade 9. So school wasn't for me. I had a lot of run-ins with the teachers. Just didn't, I got all my assignments done. I was getting great marks, but no, I had to stay and do this. And I just went, screw you, school's not for me. So I quit.
Wow. That runs a lot of parallels with my life, except I didn't do drugs or drink. It was just all about music and girls, because girls got your music, your music got your girls. But I don't have my grade 10.
Right.
Yeah. My dad, because I didn't care. I didn't care about school at all. I cared about his music. My dad actually let me quit school to go on the road.
Nice. Yeah. Well, my dad let me quit too, but I went he had his own little logging company. Like, we didn't go up the mountains and log the big stuff. We're more lower mainland, taking out all the firewood and stuff. So we'd go and log off a 60-acre lot and get it all down to bare dirt so the guy could farm it, and we'd take the wood and all that. So I quit school to go into business with my dad doing that for a couple of years.
So did you play in a band at all? Were you like...
Briefly, when I was in high school, we formed a little garage band, and we actually played a few school dances in our school and a couple other schools. We didn't have a singer, so it was all instrumental, but it wasn't like Satriani instrumental. We just played the music minus a singer. But everybody seemed to like it. But it was at that point, I think, that planted the seed of my love for music. And I learned really quickly I wasn't a good enough guitar player to make any money at that. So I put that in the back bank and quit school and went work for my dad. Then in the winter here in sort of the lower mainland, we don't have the big snowfall, but we used to shut down for the winter because everything just got too muddy. You'd be getting stuck everywhere. So we just shut down for 2 or 3 months. And I was making a pretty decent wage. And, for the first while, it was like, great. I got, 2-3 months off. But I just got sick of watching the Young and Restless and As the World Turns, all that stuff. And I thought, I gotta change. I gotta do something. Oh, I love music. So I thought, hey, I'll get into music, like maybe behind the scenes or something, right? So I called up a few studios. One of the first ones I called was Little Mountain Sound. They weren't hiring, but they needed a janitor. So I thought, the hell, it's my foot in the door. And so that's how I kind of started down my path.
So you
How'd that work out for you?
Not great. I still can't clean toilets.
So you literally went from sweeping the floors to being to where you are. That's unbelievable. That's like storybook.
It's crazy.
And so you started how old were you when you started, as you say, sweeping the floor at Little Mountain?
Oh God, 18.
Wow. And how long was it before you were actually brought into a session?
That's a bit of a blur because it was almost immediate because you do your janitor stuff and there's work going on. It's like, oh, you just kind of wander in and they can, oh, can you get me a coffee? And oh, sure. And then, but I would say 3 or 4 months, before it was actually, okay, hey, you're going to set the session up for me. And, you know enough to know which mic is mic what now and that kind of stuff. So, it's like 3 or 4 months.
Yeah. So how do you get from there? So that's the thing is that, okay. So, I mean, you're playing in a basement band. You're not going to know, you might know Shure microphones and, the odd thing, odd guitar, but now you're in a studio where you're dealing with Neumanns and, what board did they have? They didn't have a Neve board in Little Mountain back then, did they?
We did. We had both Studio A and B both had Neve boards.
Okay.
With the 1086 EQs on them. And then it wasn't until a little bit later on when we started doing, because I think the Loverboy stuff, the first record was done on a Neve. And then by the time we did the second record, we might have had it one of our first SSLs.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the SSL came in by the second album, I think.
Yeah.
I seem to recall something about that time frame. But okay, so I'm just trying to unpack all this. So now you're a janitor, and because you're a janitor, you're sort of wandering around because you want to get in that control room. You want to see what's going on because that's where your real love is. Nobody has a passion for, like you say, cleaning toilets.
Uh-uh.
So you're in there, and there's, hey, give me a coffee, Mike. Blah, blah, blah. Well, how do you end up learning how to? Because did you ever get into aligning tapes and all that stuff as well?
You know what? I never did because we had a great tech there at Little Mountain, and that's one of the reasons Little Mountain became the big name it was. Is this guy named John Vertasic.
Oh, John Vertasic. That guy was gold to everybody.
He was an absolute genius. But his philosophy, unlike later on in life when I've traveled around the world to a lot of different studios, they've always taught their tape ops and their assistants how to align tape and how that. John was adamant we weren't allowed to touch it. Because he says, I want to know it's done right. And if I'm doing it, I know it's done right. If you're doing it and this guy at night's doing it and then we never know where this tape machine is. So he was adamant. So I never really learned. I know the basics and, I could probably align a machine, but, no, none of us were ever school taught. It was all just what you picked up on the job too,
Yeah, so that's the thing is that you never actually went to what they call an audio school, like a Columbia College or one of these places. You actually learned on the job. So now, who was your direct person? Was it Bob Rock back in those days? Was he your direct guy?
Well, when I first started there, Little Mountain was owned and run by Griffith Gibson Productions, which is a big jingle house company, and that's all they did was jingles. So when I first started, there's a janitor. I set up some of the jingles. They were done by 5 or 6 p.m. The doors got shut, locked, and that was the end of it. So Bob Rock had been working there as an assistant when I was janitoring, and we were all doing jingles. So, one of my main mentors at that point was a guy named Roger Monk, who still runs his own jingle house called Dick and Rogers down in Gastown. They still do a ton of jingles and cartoon stuff. But anyways, he was a great, great engineer. He kind of taught me the old school. They would record to analog tape, but they would record to the level so that when you were doing your mix, you just bring everything up to 0, and that was your mix. So you would record to tape like you were mixing. So that's almost a lost art because now people just sort of fill it up and then, deal with it later, So I learned off Roger. And then, at night, like I said, the studio shut down. So it wasn't long after Bob Rock started going in at night because that's when he could kind of get free studio time. And he was starting to engineer and produce all the local punk bands, like DOA and Pointed Sticks and all those guys, right? So I'd finish up my day with Roger. I'd just about be out the door, and I'd hear this music blasting in one of the back studios. So I'd poke my head in. There's Bob in there. I'm like, hey, this is pretty cool. I said, mind if I hang out and give you a hand? He goes, yeah, sure, man, whatever you want. So I ended up hanging out with Bob all night. We'd be finished at like 12 or 1 or something like that. But I had to be back at 4 a.m. to do the janitor stuff and then work all day with Roger, the jingles, and then back in there with Bob. So they got, I was like 19 then or whatever. And, he could keep going. But after 20-hour days and an hour drive home, I was like wearing out. So I brought my sleeping bag in, and I virtually stayed in the loading bay of the studio for a year and a half while I was doing
Wow.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Holy cow.
Well, so you were living in Langley at this time?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've always lived out here.
Wow. Unbelievable. So yeah, because at rush hour, forget it, but you wouldn't be dealing with rush hours so much.
No, unless you had an early morning session, and then you'd have to, I'd usually hit morning rush hour doing the jingles because, I'd have to be in there by 8 to start setting up. Jingles were 9:30, 10. So I'd get that morning rush, but I'd miss it all coming home. So
are you saying you were assisting in jingles within 3 to 4 months?
Yep.
Holy smokes. But you were still doing janitor work?
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
For a little while. I didn't do the janitor. I think it was less than a year I was doing the janitor stuff because I started getting so busy with Roger and then nights with Bob, sleep in a few mornings, can't make a few of the janitor. And, they kind of got tired of things. I wasn't a great janitor, I'm not a great janitor. So they got a service in eventually, right? But that's all good.
And so you're working in the studio, you're doing all these jingles. So they're saying, hey, set up that 441 over there. You learn to know what that is. You learn to know what this is. Now, it's funny. You were talking about the lost art of having a zero-sum mix or whatever they used to call that. Well, it makes sense because back then there was no automated mixing.
No.
Once the automated mixing came in, who cares? It's going to remember for you, right?
Yeah.
So it was just easy to pull everything up to zero, and there it is. But I have to relay a story that I heard about you. A good friend of ours, I've worked with him for 32 years now, Brent Knudsen.
Oh, okay. Brent,
he said one time he was in there, I think he was in there with Tim Kreitch, and he was doing a demo or something, and they were struggling getting this mix together. And you happened to walk into the control room. And he said, what's going on? We can't get this mix. No, you mind if I have a try? Sure. Brent says you walked up to the board, looked at the track sheet, and he said it was almost perfect just from you eyeballing it. It was like the most amazing thing he's ever seen. Oh, we had Mike Reno on the show. I relayed that message to him, and he said to say hi to you. He says you guys hang out a lot still.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we've been best buddies for a long time. When we're back doing their records, Bob was Bruce Fairburn, great famous guy here in Vancouver. Kind of, him and Bob and I kind of was the team that did a lot of the stuff. But anyways, we're doing the Loverboy records, and back in those days, it was all manual mixing, right? Like, I think by the time we did the first Loverboy, we had got our 24-track 2-inch machine, but up to then it was a 16-track. But we got 24 tracks. Soon after that, you would sync the machines together, so you have 48 tracks. But anyways, it was all we'd bring the stuff, no automated boards, so we'd bring the mix up and all that. Well, it was like a choreographed dance. So usually there was at least me, Bob, and Bruce. Sometimes we'd have Paul Dean and Mike Reno and whatever in. So there'd be 5, 6 of us. So as the song's going, one of my moves is I have to reach over and move the toms, ride the toms. So the cymbals of the tom tracks would be too much. So you'd ride the toms up. And then that was, oh yeah, right. Somebody's got to push the echo on the lead vocal. So it was this, you had all your moves to do. So when you got the mix, it was just everybody got their moves correctly, but they're always different. So we're like, oh, that was really close. We need one with a little bit more lead vocal. Well, that would just be a different mix because the amounts you would push the faders or maybe slightly do too much echo or not enough or like it was, but what a lot of fun. It was by the time we're ready to start printing mixes, probably take, half or 3/4 of the day to get the mix ready. And by the time you're ready to print mixes, then you all got to kind of sit there and learn your moves. So that would take an hour or two. And then you're really in the moment, kind of like doing a live show, man. Like, you've rehearsed all week and now we're doing our live show. It's like, oh, I missed that, but that was great, So, it was about an hour or two printing the mix. And that was a lot.
That's the thing. I mean, even with Pro Tools, I mean, doing like, I'm never doing, I mean, I do finish mixes here, but it's certainly not the level you're working at by any stretch, But I mean, even when I'm doing mixes, Pro Tools, which is all automated and all this stuff, it can take me a day doing a demo, just getting the mix, Yeah. And of course, I never trust my ears in the studio. So I'm like, I've said to a few people, I go out to my SUV and I play it in the SUV and then I bring it to my wife's car and, trying to get different things because I always notice what's wrong with it. My ears aren't tuned to my room somehow,
Yeah. No,
but bringing back Jean Vitasic, my very first little studio I had in Coquitlam, that guy, he actually came out to my house for free and looked at my room and told me where to put stuff. Wow. I couldn't believe it. I hardly knew the guy. I phoned him up one day. Oh, sure, I'd be glad to help you out. He drove out to my house in Coquitlam. Yeah, what a guy.
He was just into it. He loved it all.
Yeah.
Loved it. Yeah.
How did he pass away? What happened?
Cancer.
Was that shit?
Yeah, it's always I think it was colon cancer. So he used to say, "You guys, you go." He said, "I didn't want the finger up my bum." He says, "But you go get it checked."
Yeah. So true. Yeah, but that's sad. Anyway, but we would better get back to some happy stuff because that bothers me. So that's okay. Now we moved into Loverboy. So by the time you're working with Loverboy, you're second engineer, I would say. Because you'd have Bruce Fairbairn, you'd have Bob Rock as his first engineer. So, okay, can you tell everybody what the hierarchy is in the recording studio at that level? So you've got the producer and you got the engineer. So basically, Bruce Fairbairn's going, this is what I envision. Bob Rock is saying, okay, this is okay. I think we can do it this way. Bob Rock is saying to you, what do you think, Mike? Can you do this? And you're out there adjusting the microphones. Is that how it works?
It's pretty much it. Yeah, Bruce is responsible for the band, the songs, making sure the songs are right. Nowadays, a lot of producers write the songs. Mm-hmm. Bruce didn't, that I saw, ever really write anything, but, if he thought the songs could be stronger, he would hook them up with songwriters, like Jim Vallance or Diane Warren, or, he would always make sure the songs are ready to go before we go into the studio. Because, if you're writing in the studio, it's just a waste of time. And then, back then, studio time was super expensive. It's come down a lot over the years, but, you're spending a lot of money in the studio. So Bruce loved trimming things down. And Bob, as the engineer, you're the sort of conduit between what the producer envisions and how to actually physically do it. So if you likened it to doing a movie, the producer is like the director and the engineer is like the cameraman. So the engineers are running all the gear. He's making the sound decisions and the shaping of the sounds and everything. And then as a second engineer, I'm basically, just Bob's assistant. So if he needs something set up, or, I could hear Bob and Bruce talking about, okay, well, after we're done this vocal part, let's get Mike in to do his vocals or something like that. Well, I'd scoot off, and on the side, I'd start getting all that ready. So when Mike showed up, we're ready to go. It wasn't like, oh, can you set this up? So it was always about saving time in the studio. So you kind of second guess, keep your ear to the ground, know what's going on, and be ready for everything, so.
Can you answer a question for me? It's a wide rumor. I've heard it for years about the vocal on Janie's Got a Gun by Aerosmith. Mm-hmm. You must have been there for that.
Yes, sir.
I heard that he did that in one pass into an SM7 with 2 overdubs.
Probably, because a lot of that stuff was done. Even when we were tracking, we had him out in a little vocal booth. All his vocals was done on SM7. Mm-hmm. He would be in his little vocal booth, and then sometimes we'd keep the live vocal. You have a little bit of drum bleed, but we would keep it because you'd come in and sing it again, and it's like, Bruce said, this vibe was way better on that section. Let's keep that. So, but Steven was an amazing, they were totally sober during all those records. So he was just all on point, and all that, that harmony stuff at the end, Janie's got a, that's just Steven one take. Oh, give me another track, which is always tough when you're on analog now at this point, because you get to, okay, we got to find a track somewhere. And but he just pull these harmonies out of the air and just say, okay, give me another track, and he'd sing this harmony. Let me double that. Okay. Oh, I got another idea. And, and he'd throw all this stuff out. And, quite often Bruce would come in at night because, this is us at night. Bruce used to go home sort of dinner, shortly after dinner, and we'd just carry on with Bruce says, oh, can you do the solo tonight? Can you do this? We just goof around with Steven quite often. So he'd throw a lot of ideas on tape, and quite often, Bruce would come in and say, oh, I like that. No, let's get rid of that. Let's trim that down. But, he heard the Janie's thing, and he goes, we're keeping it all right to the end. That's why they end up being such a long fade out. And,
Yeah, he's one of my favorite rock and roll singers. That guy, he's got so much rhythm in him, and really good pitch and phrasing.
Yeah.
Just an amazing singer. Yeah, that we got to get that transition. Like from where you were into Loverboy. Now, of course, was it the Loverboy sound that really brought a lot of these, like the Bon Jovis and Aerosmith and all that stuff, that brought them to Vancouver, correct?
For sure. Yep. Because Loverboy was, one of the first Canadian bands in a while, anyways, let's say in a while, that really made some noise down the States. For whatever reason, we had got a lot of great music up here, and then it would just hit that brick wall of the border. But, for some reason that translated down there, and, it sold a couple million, whatever, records down there. So it really went out on the airwaves down there and got really well known. And I believe, John or Bon Jovi or one of the guys had heard it and said, hey, what about this Bruce Fairbairn guy or something like that, right? So that's what attracted the Bon Jovis up. And, to be honest, that's when it really sort of split Vancouver wide open,
Was it John Bon Jovi that came up first, or was it Aerosmith? I think it was Bon Jovi.
No, I think it was Aerosmith.
No, it was because, like I said, it was Outlaws. And because I remember John Bon Jovi coming in I was working at a place called the Embassy. Remember that down on Davie Street?
Embassy Club?
Yeah, the Embassy Club, it was called the Embassy. And the Bon Jovi band came in and started playing songs off Slippery When Wet to try them out in front of the people.
All right. Oh,
and that was the only hit single they had before that was Runaway.
Yeah. And you said to John, hey, John, how about Whoa?
Hey, I want a credit.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy, oh boy, that's unbelievable. So Aerosmith, Bon Jovi, and then of course, then you start getting like, Mark LaFrance. He did so much work with
he was in there sometimes more days than I was.
I know. Motley Crue. Good Lord.
Good. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
And Mark has told me a few times, Bob Rock has run into him, sits thinking, when you were recording that album, did you really think that Kickstart My Heart was going to be the big one? And it really was. It was sort of a secondary single, but that song has made so much money in the movies and TV shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just keeps going and going.
And that's the stuff you don't realize when you're doing that kind of stuff. You think, even back then, we've always been so trained that it's got to be the radio. So where's the radio hit? Radio, which isn't such a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Right?
It certainly isn't.
It's so streamed and all that. But even back then, it was radio. But you never really understood the sync licenses. Like, if you get it into a movie or a little bit later on, a video game or all that other stuff can be so much bigger than what the radio is. Radio's got your life. You're hot for, a couple of weeks, maybe if you're lucky, a couple of months, but you know what I mean? Like, but you get a sync license on these movies every time that's played. You get a little bit out of that. It's amazing.
Especially when you get a band like Motley Crue and Bon Jovi too, for that matter, who were smart enough to own their own masters.
Yeah.
Those guys are making all the money.
There you go.
Like unbelievable. Like that was smart move. That's smart business, boy. For guys, especially the Motley Crue guys, they sort of came from a pretty drug infested background.
Yeah.
But they were Nicky Sixx, I think he's the main guy, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. He's sort of
he's the business smarts, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Wow. So tell me how. From there, of course, now AC/DC comes calling.
Mm-hmm.
Now they've been very, very good for your career. Wow.
Yeah. Lucked out on that one.
So was the first album Thunderstruck?
Yeah. Yeah. Now they had recorded that in a studio in Ireland, I believe, with their brother George.
Oh, yeah, right. That's right, because he was there for producer at first.
Yeah. And we just done all the basic tracks, and then something happened, a family illness or something. Anyways, he couldn't finish the record, so they started looking through, who and at that time, Bruce has got the Aerosmith and the Bon Jovis and all that, and said, okay, well, this guy seems to know what he's doing. Let's go check him out. So Malcolm came out with their then manager and came to the studio and had a little meeting with Bruce. They hit it off, and Bruce says, yeah, sure, let's do it. So they came to Vancouver. They had all their tracks done, but they needed the vocals sung and all the solos done, right? So first couple songs, get in, start singing. It's like, oh, shoot, the key is wrong for Brian. We got to change the key of the song. So we had to re-record the guitars and bass to change the key to a different thing. And Malcolm and Angus liked the sound of the instrument so much better. We ended up redoing all the songs. And we even actually, I think we recorded 2 songs. We had Chris Slade, was drummer at that point, came in and recorded 2 songs. So, I guess I just cemented myself into their little family because they liked the sound that I was getting for them. So the lucky one.
You just had a #1 album with them.
Yeah. How about that, eh?
No kidding. And so you've gone right up to the conductor's chair, buddy.
Well, I got to say, Brendan O'Brien produced that one. And, it was a lot of it was Brendan and Angus, man. They really pulled it out on that one.
Yeah. Malcolm was kind of the business guy of that band, wasn't he?
Mal was the main guy. He was definitely the leader. It was him and Angus, but Mal was, being a little bit older. He was definitely driving the train.
And that was cancer once again, wasn't it?
Alzheimer.
Oh yeah. Oh jeez. I always thought it was brain cancer.
Yeah, no.
Alzheimer of all things.
Form of, like all your blood vessels just die off, right? And then your brain, you just eventually forget to breathe and forget your heart, and yeah, it's pretty sad.
With Alzheimer's, that's what happens?
That's how you die.
I didn't realize that. I couldn't figure out why a person would die from Alzheimer's. I always thought it was just memory, but it's actually your entire body function starts.
Well, if your brain's shutting down, and first things are pretty obvious things are your memory, and then function starts going, and then once your function starts going, at some point, because we're not conscious of keeping our heart beating or breathing. It's an auto thing that's in your brain. Well, if that shuts down,
yeah.
You're like, why am I not breathing? It's.
Yeah, good point. I never even put that together. Weird. Yeah. I guess I should probably sit up. I look like I'm sort of lounging around,
So, I mean, you've produced so many iconic songs and albums and such. When you're doing your work, do you get a sense when the work's almost done with a particular album, which one's going to be a hit? Are you at that point now where you can just tell?
You know what, Scott? It's a weird, elusive thing. So my answer to that would be no. When we're doing Thunderstruck, and we had the song almost done, and then Angus had this idea, Bruce says, we need an intro. So he says, I got this idea I've been working on. So, okay. So he lights a cigarette, puts it in his mouth, and then starts out, okay, roll the tape. So he goes, okay, that's cool. So he plays through the whole intro, and like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool, and keeps going. And the verse starts, and Angus is still going, and I'm like, okay, still going. Chorus comes, he's still going, and Bruce is going, yeah, just keep the tape roll. So one take, Angus does that through the whole song. And at the end of the song, the acid smoke was like that. Right? He goes, "Wow, Bruce, how's that? You like that, mate?" Oh, that's awesome. He said, "Let's try another pass." We tried a couple other passes, but we ended up going with that first take. So if you listen to the mix now, it's throughout the whole song. I mean, there's places in the mix that we ducked it down under, and you can barely hear it, but it's one take through the whole song. But that song, we did the song, none of us had, it was a great song, but none of us had that feeling that it was going to become one of their iconic songs up there with, Back in Black and Highway to Hell and Hell's Bells and all. Like, it's one of their
it's an anthem
songs. It's like we never had an inkling about that at all.
How about now when you look back on that though, and you hear these songs of just now, like they become anthems, rock anthems.
I still can't believe it. I still think of back.
Do you think back in the studio at all these weird little things that have been going on when they're trying to figure it out and sort of work their way through it? And
then there's bands like did a couple records, but we did a record with a band called Blue Murder, and it was John Sykes who co-wrote a lot of that big White Snake record with Coverdale. I mean, he was in Tigers of Pantang. He was in Thin Lizzy.
Thin Lizzy, yeah.
Yeah, awesome guitar player. So we doing that record, Carmine Apiece on drums, Tony Franklin on bass. I mean, it was just a dream team. We had Geffen 100% behind us. It was huge. Done. Finished the record. Funny little side story. John was trying to find a singer and he's trying to get Glenn Hughes and a whole bunch of other guys and just couldn't get it together. So John says, fuck it, I'll sing. And we didn't know he could sing. So Bob says, well, go down to LA. He says, do the vocals with John. Let's, see how it turns out. So we go down to LA and we'd had the tapes shipped down to us. Well, I'm down there 10 days and no tapes yet. So we're like, where the hell's the tapes? Oh, stuck in customs. We're like, stuck in customs. Oh, so, it's on the big 2-inch reels, right? We probably had 30 of them being sent down. Well, the band's called Blue Murder. One of the songs is called Sex Child. And we had a slave and a master reel. So you get Blue Murder, Sex Child, slave, and master. The border guys are saying, no, we're not allowing these out until you produce a machine that can play back these snuff films. He thought they were porn snuff films.
Oh,
my God.
Almost 3 weeks before we could clear the tapes.
Oh, my gosh.
But, so we do this record, one of the best records I've ever done. I mean, I love that record. And over the years, I've run into so many people that say, what happened? That was my favorite band. To this day, there's bars in down the States you can go into, and the jukebox is Blue Murder. But did it ever sell? No, it just was one of those records that didn't do it. So, like I say, sometimes you think something's going to be huge, and it just, what happened to that? And then other songs that you're like, oh, that was a good song, and that's like one of the biggest things. So I can't ever tell.
Somebody described it as the pieces of the pie. Everything has to be in order. You have to have the management. You have to have the promotion. You have to have the record company. You have to have, and if one of those pieces is missing, you can't sell the pie. Nobody's going to buy it. And it's a weird sort of thing about that, Well,
Mick, here's another example though. So we're doing this record for the Dan Reed project. So Bruce Fairbairn producing. He had done all these other records. Bill Graham was Dan's manager. So the big name is Bill Graham. We're on Polygram, which is at that time was one of the biggest kind of rock labels down the States. We're doing this record that was a cross between funk and rock and funk kind of stuff, right? So we're finish the record off. It's fantastic. This is going to hit it out of the park. Well, shortly before that, one of the main A&R guys, Derek Schulman, that worked for Polygram, quit, and it got passed over to his other guy. Bill Graham died. And this thing just kind of went flat. And, a lot of the radio sort of stuff back to us was, the funk guy, it's too rocky for the funk guys and it's too funky for the rock guys. It just sort of hit between the cracks. But I think it was less than 6 months later, Living Color comes out with their rock funk record, and bam, away it goes. So you can think you have all, well, we got it all lined up on this one. Here, give me a good, it's like.
Is it possible that Bill Graham, had he lived, it might have put it over the top, though?
Possibly, but I think it was a little bit before its time. Like it's down to timing. You know, that's why Slippery When Wet was so huge. Everybody was starving for that type of music to come out, and it was crafted and put together in a perfect way that it would appeal to a large audience that was craving for that kind of rock, real melodic, not wimpy rock. It rocked, but it had a melody, and you could sing along to it as an anthem, and it filled the stadiums, and you know, it's just timing.
It's interesting. You were talking about the AC/DC and writing songs, and all of a sudden it's not in Brian Johnson's the right range, it's not in the right key form, and so they have to rewrite it. And the biggest one I remember that I did a gig with Don Felder. I did a gig, and so he was telling me a story about, because he was pretty much instrumental on Hotel California. It was his music, and the band finished, you know, lyrically and that sort of thing. But they had done the entire song, and Don Henley would take the tape home and listen in the car, but he would just head tone, you know, sort of get his phrasing together. Yeah. It came time to sing it, and it was totally out of his range. So anybody who knows that song, it's basically, to play it properly, it's capoed on the 7th fret, and you play it in the E minor position. Mm-hmm. They had done the entire song in E minor. And so they had to redo the entire song so that Don Henley could sing it. So like, there you go. I mean, and that's like, imagine how much time was spent on that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it wasn't uncommon too, because, you know, you'd have the song written, and usually the vocalist had an idea of melody, still working on lyrics. But like you say, you know, you just kind of hum it along in your head, and oh yeah, that'll be great, and on the piano, oh, that's going to sound gorgeous, and all that. But a little later, you know, Bruce, I saw, you know, in my experience, Bruce is really good. He says, no, I want you singing along as we track the record. And sometimes it's 30, 40 takes. So, you know, the singer's like just about done after that many times. But it's to get the feel for how he's going to sing it. How is the range? Because if we're going to change the key or change anything, now's the time to do it. And it also gives the band guys idea where the phrasing, the vocal is, so they're not playing through it. They can, you know, like the old time music in 50s, 60s, you know, whatever, would accompany the vocalist. It was all about the vocalist and accompanying it. And then that kind of changed. So it was all about the music, and the vocalist just kind of put the words to it. You know, it's this weird thing. We've gone back and forth through history with all that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's so many times. It's true. What you're saying is that the melody and phrasing and stuff is done after the bed tracks are done. And especially when you get in boutique studios like mine, like I remember having Jerry Adolph come over and play on an album that I was producing out of my home. And so he came over and set up, and we did the tracks. And then after the track was done, he says, man, that's a great song. He said, but I just wish I would have heard it at the end. You know, I would have played something totally different, you know? Because you end up doing fills where you wouldn't have, and not playing fills where you should have, and all that stuff. Because the melody guides the song, you know.
And it does. And you know, as musicians, and you're playing along to sort of a blank thing, you'll want to just fill a hole. Oh, here's a gap. Oh, well, here, I'll make that a little more interesting. Or I'll do a little lead thing in here, or I'll do a vocal scat in here. And then you go, yeah, but that was the solo, or that was the, like, it's better to play as a unit. Yeah, because you all know where you're going to be sitting and what's going on, than it is to piece a record. Like today, a lot of records are pieced together. Throw the drums down first. Okay, now let's do bass. Now, you know, there's not a lot of live stuff in it. You know, I get it. Yeah, it's expensive to have everybody in the studio and try and get it all live. But you know, to me, that's where you get the best stuff.
John Shields is going to bust me if I don't say this, because these things go out internationally. And I just said Jerry Adolph and threw it out there because me and you know who he is. Jerry Adolph is one of the most in-demand session drummers in Vancouver. Yeah, so that's the thing, is that when you're playing in a live band, and I was gonna bring this up with bring back the Loverboy phenomenon, which it was a phenomenon for Vancouver at the time, is that a band will rehearse and rehearse and rehearse, and they play live shows and all that stuff leading up to that first album. So they sort of know what they're going to do delivering that album. Yeah. Then you get a band like Loverboy, who now they're on tour and they're writing their second album on tour. And the only time they're really playing it is at sound check. They can't play it in front of people. Mm-hmm. It's possible they might have thrown a song in there, but I doubt it. You know, you only got 25 minutes usually backing up the opening act. Yeah, hits and out of there. So now their next album is even better and bigger than the first album. Which that's the thing, is that you have so much energy that goes into the first album. The second album is always so hard for somebody, especially a new band.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because you're spending the entire time touring and writing in your hotel room or wherever you can and trying to teach the band at sound check and that sort of thing. And then you get into the studio and you got to do it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, what I find too is like, you know, like you say, the band's first record, you know, some of them have had 20 years of writing songs and got, you know, 40 songs to sort of compile down to 10 or 12 songs that, you know, have all been worked on in various stages and developed into these great songs. So now you put your record out, you've got less than a year to get the next one out, and you got to beat the first record. And it's like, it's so hard to do unless you're a really proficient writer and can come up, because, you know, all those songs that you used before for the first record, all the not good ones were pushed to the side. So it's not like you could grab one of those and say, oh, that'll be our lead-off single for the next record. Or not very often that happens, you know? So a lot of pressure is on a band. And, you know, their second and third records, you know, back in our day were the more important ones. The first one's got the attention. The second one sort of slotted you in, and then the third one hit you home, you know? So
yeah, I
think that's why there's a lot more co-writes going on records back then too, you know, like when they're going for that AOR hit kind of thing, you know.
Well, that's what they'll bring in, like you say, a Jim Vallance or a Diane Warren. Like with Aerosmith, you know, they had some ideas of songs, but they sat back. Michael Sicoli, you probably know Michael as well, you know, dear friend of mine. But we worked together with Jim Vallance years ago, and he said, you know what it is about Jim? He's a craftsman. He's not just a songwriter. He understands the craft. It's like a cabinet maker who understands each type of wood. And he can take your ideas and go, if you just do this and this and this, you know, and that's where he's so instrumental on. That's why he's become such a huge writer for all these great bands out there, not just Brian, you know, because he can take these ideas and make them into something like the Aerosmiths and the Ozzy Osbournes and all that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. He's going to be on our show next week. I can't wait to talk to him about that.
And then Justin, for your use, you know, rather than here's a Jim Vallance song, he makes it a Bryan Adams song, or now let's make this an Aerosmith song. You know, he can adjust it and work with the band and the writers to make it theirs and not his.
He said something one time to me that Deuce is Wild, the Aerosmith song, that was, I think, was done for a movie, but the entire song is Jim. Steven Tyler just sang over top of it. And he sent them a demo, but they were in such a hurry to get it out for the movie. Steven Tyler just sang over it and sent it out. So it's not even Aerosmith playing on it. It's actually Jim Vallance.
I don't remember that, because I know I mixed that song, but I don't remember what. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I know. It's pretty amazing. So there you go. I mean, he's a multifaceted person. He understands music from, you know, we're Beatle brothers. Me and him, probably once a week, we send things back and forth about the Beatles to this day. Right on. We'll find some nugget that we didn't notice before or something.
Yeah.
You know? It's hilarious. It's insane.
In addition to all the incredible credits you have, Mike, for albums, you also have movie soundtracks. And I loved the AC/DC work for Iron Man 2. And I was wondering, what do you do different for a soundtrack from your role than you do for like an album?
You know, most of the soundtracks that I think my mixes are on were probably just pulled from the albums for that, and then added or licensed on or whatever. A lot of times when I'm mixing, I'll also mix I don't like mixing stems. So stems are, a separate drum track, a separate guitar, a separate, but I will do instrumentals, so no lead vocals or stuff like that. So sometimes they'll use portions of those for soundtracks. But for the Iron Man, and I can't remember what ended up in the movie, but originally the whole movie was going to be completely AC/DC.
Wow.
No other songs. I don't think it ended up that way.
Yeah.
But they sent me all the music for all of Back in Black. So I got the multi-track tapes, but obviously years later, the actual physical tapes are probably not getting in very good shape, but they had transferred it to Pro Tools at 192 mix. So I had to work in 192.
Wow.
Wow.
So I got to remix basically all of Back in Black for that movie. So I had to mix the song, but I had to do it. So in this section, they wanted the vocal out here, they wanted that. And so I had to, match it pretty damn close to the whole record. So that was a lot of fun to do. And I've got to tell you on that, on Back in Black, Aang's wailing away, soloing away, and the tag there as a song fades out, and he's, well, that goes on for probably another minute and a half, and it gets better. The soloing gets better, but they couldn't keep it. The band starts falling apart, and they couldn't have faded it out. So I was pretty sure I did myself a mix of that without the fade, but I can't find it to this day. But it was pretty incredible.
Different. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you make any different decisions when you're doing a soundtrack for like theater positioning, like surround sound and that kind of thing, compared to making an album?
For that one, I was not asked to do like a theater mix for the movie. It's just all strictly stereo. They'll put in their stereo thing, and then they do all their.
Have you done that?
Gotcha.
I do for like live DVDs. I mix in surround, but my philosophy for that is we're all looking at the stage. The band's going bombastic. So basically, what I do is I do a wide stereo. So instead of stereo hitting you like this, I'll go sort of 3 and 9 o'clock, and then that's the band. But the real magic to me with a live rock format for DVD, surround, is you got to have as many vocal mics as you can up there, because then you can place it all there. Like if you've got 12 vocal mics behind you, when that one guy whistles, he's there. You know what I'm saying?
Crowd, you mean crowd mics?
Yeah. If you've only got 4, well, that whistle is in probably 2 of those, so he's sort of here. But when you can put him there or put him there or put him there, it really fools your brain into like, yeah, I'm at the show, man. This is great. And
wow.
That's more important than what you're hearing from the band, because, I've seen some live stuff, even of some small stages, and I won't mention the band, but, they're looking and, oh, man, this sounds fantastic. And, there's the acoustic guitar player there, but he's hitting me in my ear behind. So it's like, why is the acoustic guitar here when I see him there? Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, if I'm watching a surround sound of a live show, I'd want to hear the crowd behind me the way I would in a live show. Yeah. But that's brilliant. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
About the exact position.
Mountain had a great experience doing the Rolling Stones thing. I've read a few things about him with was it Martin Scorsese that directed the live Stones thing or whatever. So Bob was doing the mixes, and Martin goes, no, it's not right. And Bob was pulling his ear out. So they finally had a meeting about it, and he goes, he says, when I cut to the drum set, he says, that's what I want to hear, is when I cut to the shot of Watts on his drums. He says, I want the drums to be right there, and then the guitars over here. So he had Bob mix in segments that were according to his cuts. And Bob says, well, I don't know what you're cutting. So they figured out how to do a rough cut of the whole movie, how it was basically going to be, and then Bob had to mix to that. So each segment of his mix, he had to change to what the camera perspective was. So it was like you or I were now wherever the camera went, that's where our ears were. So that's what you heard. It wasn't the music and different cuts of the band like all our modern videos are. It's like, and I've never seen it, so I don't know.
That just reminds me of those shredded videos where you see, well, they got those shredded videos where you'll see as the camera pans the drums, you hear and it go, as the camera pans by, the drums disappear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, I laugh at that stuff. So I got to bring up Mutt Lange. So Back in Black, that was the famous Mutt Lange production.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest selling albums of all time. I think it's the biggest selling album of all time. Back in Black.
Up there, yeah.
Yeah. Now, you're not going to tell me this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. I have some Def Leppard tracks, stems. And when I brought them up, I couldn't believe how noisy the tracks were.
Oh,
when you mix them together, it sounds like the record. But when you listen to them individually, it's like, wow. Do you find sometimes when you're going back to some of those older things, like AC/DC, the Back in Black is older than Def Leppard.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you find when you're listening to those tracks, do you find that they're clean? Do you find that they're noisy in comparison to nowadays? Do you find they're comparable?
That's tough. Maybe because I'm more old school guy, but I like noisy tracks. Like sometimes I'll get people sending me stuff where they've put a gate in between all the track. Like even on the tom mics, they've got to gate it out till the toms come in, and then there's the toms. And like I love everything rattling away and squeaking away, and even on the guitars, a little bit of feedback, the amp buzz, the noise. Like I love all that because that's what makes it organic and real to me. Acoustic guitars, like some people go through and painstakingly try and get rid of the squeak, 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 squeak.
Yeah.
Well, it's like going through a vocal and getting rid of all the breaths. It's like I'm watching something like that, and I'm getting breathless because when are they going to breathe? I don't hear them breathing, so I love all that noise stuff. Now, for sure, when I go back and, I'm giant analog lover, supporter guy, when I finally get to mix something that was done on analog or, at least bounced through analog, I'm like, this is going to be great. Well, this hiss, like especially if you're going down to and everybody stops. And there's this big long fade out of the cymbals and everything, and it's like the ocean. Like what the hell? Oh, right, that's why we switched to digital. Like usually ears were more tuned to it back in the day. Now we're tuned to silence, so it's like, oh my god, how can I get this out smoothly and make it sound natural? And some of that stuff bugs me, but.
Well, Jimmy Page was a big proponent, like you, of leaving all the natural noises and hums and buzzes and clicks in. Apparently, there was a story when he was working in Vancouver. He was doing a Coverdale Page album. Was that the one they were doing there?
Yeah.
And where somebody had gone in and cleaned up his track, and he came back the next day and said, "What the hell did you do?" I like that stuff. Why'd you clean it up? I want that noise. They thought they were doing him a favor.
Yeah, well, actually, that was me. So
was it really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we're down in Miami. Like we'd done all the tracking here in Vancouver, and then we went down to Miami to do the overdubs.
Is that Criteria?
Yeah, that Criteria. And both David and Jimmy were living down there at the time, so that's why we went to Miami. But they only wanted to work. Like we started at noon or 1 and we'd work till 4 or 5 in the afternoon, 5 days a week. So it ended up taking us 9 months to get through this record. But basically every day, Jimmy would show up or whatever, and we'd do guitars for one day. Or the next day would be David would show up, we'd do vocals for one day. So one day Jimmy came in, we did a whole bunch of acoustic guitars in one song. And 4 or 5 o'clock, he says, I've had it. He says, let's go back tomorrow and see what we got. So, okay. So he goes home. Now we're doing this on analog, but we had a way of taking it off to this 2-track machine, locking it up digitally and fly it back in. So, these guitars are kind of all over the place. So I'll just organize them a bit, put them a little bit more in time and, this and that. So, spend an hour or two doing that. Come in the morning, Jimmy listens to it and goes, what happened to the guitars? I said, I just, fix them up a bit, move them around, clean them up a bit. He goes, "We'll put them back." So it was an awesome lesson to me. Like, that's when I started listening to music as like if there's magic, it doesn't matter if it's out of tune or out of time or whatever. If it's evoking an emotion in you, then it's right.
Like I said about Jim Vallance and I, we still listening to those nuggets because there's so many things on Beatle albums. There's just so many mistakes and weird anomalies that happen. And that's what keeps you listening to them after all these years,
Yeah. And it's not to laugh at it. It's again, what makes it real and magic. And that's the magic.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, tell me why. I was listening to it. And I think it's in, this is a C. So the opening chords would be D minor, G, D minor, G, D minor, G. Tell me C, to A minor. I'm listening. Somebody's playing D minor. Somebody else is playing a D7th, major. Right. And they're both playing it, and it's on every chorus. And I'm going, but it works somehow, and it's a mistake. Yeah. It's like your ears get used to it, Very odd.
Just want to say quickly here too, when we're doing the Aerosmith stuff, sometimes things be getting changed and all that. And we did a song called Ragdoll. Right?
Yeah.
Ragdoll.
Yeah.
Well, it was originally called Ragtime. And it was, like the ragtime dancing, whatever. So, and our guy, John Kolodner had come up and he did not want it to be ragtime. It reminded me of, some chick on her period or something like that. So right. You've got to change this to Ragdoll. It can't be ragtime. But the song's done. We've mixed it. No. So Stephen had to go out and change all the lyrics and the choruses. But if you listen to the mix, we didn't change the background. So they're all still singing ragtime. And Stephen's going Ragdoll. So listen to it. The backgrounds are still going ragtime.
You know what I have? I have an early demo of Do It Like a Lady.
Oh, right.
Instead, because they changed it from Do It Like a Lady to Dude Looks Like a Lady.
Yeah.
So I've got the original demo of that. I don't know how I got it.
Right.
I got it somewhere. Yeah, you must witness a lot of changes like that from inception to final cut. My God, because there's so much work that gets done right in front of your eyes.
Yeah. Less and less, I'd say more these days, just because of editing and all that. You don't see any of those, especially when you finally got it done and then at the last second. Like another last second thing was Love in an Elevator. Collider had said, "Oh, we need to have a breakdown in this song." We're like, "What the hell?" So I had to edit a breakdown. So basically that whole going down, and then the guitar solo, that breakdown, that's just the drums from the tag edited on 2-inch tape together to make a loop, and we just recorded some more instruments over it. So that was all done after the mix.
Wow.
And remixed that section and edited it in.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is Kolodner is the guy that actually stars in the video for Dude Looks Like a Lady. Yeah. Right? He's the guy. If you guys see the video, he's the guy with the guy with the big beard and long hair.
Yeah. And then to change the drums up a bit, I put a delay on it, so it's going ding 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 ding. But basically, it's the same drum tracks from the tag that's just edited in there.
So I do a little Stuart Copeland. You add an echo on it, so you get an extra hit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, Stuart Copeland used to record with. I guess he used to use an Echoplex in those days. He'd actually play to the Echoplex.
Yeah.
So yeah. And there was something else that I remember thinking, like, how did they play that? Because it's so perfect, and I didn't realize it was actually just an echo. I thought a guy was playing a keyboard. He's going, he's not. He's just playing one note.
Yeah.
He's just playing one note. He's like, daga. How stupid of me.
Yeah.
But also I think there's less and less of that in the studio creation going on, because more and more people have studios like what I've got here, where you can actually work out all that stuff. So when you go into the studio, you're not wasting a lot of valuable time. That's right. You're sort of going in. I'd heard that's why Steve Tyler was able to do Janie's Got a Gun in such a short amount of time, is because the pre-production was so perfect for that song. He knew what he was going to do down to the breath,
I guess I wasn't a part for the pre-production. That would have been sort of Bruce before we came into the studio. But I will say, you know, Bruce would go home a lot of times at dinner, 7:00 kind of thing, and we'd stay till midnight or 1, and you know, whatever. So they're paying for the day anyway. So Steven wanted to play. Okay, cool. Let's sing all these background vocals. So it wasn't taking up studio time the next day when Bruce had all the other stuff he wanted to do. He could listen to all these. Oh, great. Well, that's done. That mark that off our list to do. So in a way, we're saving money by, you know, doing it after hours, you know.
Well, his family time was fairly important to him back in those days. He used to coach his kids. He used to coach his kids' baseball team and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So he'd go home at dinner time
or something like that. He'd go home, make supper, and then sometimes have to coach the kids. So yeah, no, his family time was pretty important to him. You know, I mean, he loved doing it in the studio, but he's really efficient man, and he, you know, got done in his 8 or 10 hours what he wanted doing, and you know, sometimes we'd stay after, but it was just to do bonus stuff, you know.
There's some famous stories. Charles brought up one from the old days. This was before you worked with them, but where Steven Tyler used a sugar packet for a shaker on Sweet Emotion. Is there anything like that that's been done in front of you, like where you didn't have something, so you sort of just used something else? I know Randy Bachman talks about the percussion. They used the bottom of I think it was a Javex bottle on taking care of business. They just beat it like a conga.
Oh, cool! Yeah,
to get the gallop.
We made a few things. Like there's what the hell song was that we did? Steve and I did it. They're called Guppy Plunges. So I got a credit for that, you know, on my thing. But they're basically just lip smacks.
Oh, okay.
When you do them, they almost sound like these weird hand claps. We did that. Got a few flesh bongos in, so we get a couple of the dancers from, you know, number 5 or whoever. They'd come in and be bare-bottomed congos and stuff. So we did a lot of stuff like that. I mean, we had all the percussion stuff, and I got to tell you, with Steven, with his sense of timing, because he used to be a drummer, right? And that's why he drove Joey nuts. But like, I've never seen anybody, like one take, he'd have the tambourine done or shakers, like, and he had this cool thing where he would always do them in a figure of 8, and that's how he got them so perfect all the time. But try and, you know, draw a figure of 8 with these two things in your hand, like I can't do it. And he just, you know, it was just amazing. So, you know, as a percussionist, he was just amazing. That's, you know, what adds a lot of the flavor to a lot of their tracks is that subtle percussion stuff. But we didn't do sugar packets. They probably weren't allowed them anymore.
Yeah, I guess not. Who knows what they would have smuggled inside of them.
You don't have to drop names, although we would love if you did. What are 2 or 3 of the craziest things you saw happen in the studio with some of these bands? Because some of these bands obviously have some notoriety to their antics. So, drop us a couple.
God, you know, I don't know if there's the crazy stuff, you know, because we're all pretty hardcore work orientated. You know, I will say on the Blue Murder record, you know, we would work till 11:30, 12, so that we could have enough time to get down to the strip bar. I think the strip bar is closed at 12 or something, right? So we get down there, say hey to the girls, line them up. We'd all go to Club Soda afterwards, or one of the bars afterwards. As the strippers would come out, and we'd all hang out, party there. And then on a lot of the nights, they would come back to the studio, and we'd hang out there till like 3 or 4 in the morning. And then, you know, at 10 in the morning when Bob came in, me and John, he's just so hungover, and we'd go, oh my God. And we'd sort of, oh, that's it. We're not drinking anything anymore. And blah, blah. By the time, you know, 5 o'clock would roll around, we'd go like, so where are we going tonight? that was the Blue Murder session, man. It was every night. It was crazy.
I remember when Bon Jovi played, I think did they play BC Place? It was a huge gig. And their sound man used to be my sound man in Shama.
Oh, wow.
Mike Renault. So I couldn't go to the show. I was playing somewhere, typical. I had a gig. So I sent my son and Brent Knudsen and his wife at the time, or girlfriend, I mean. And so they went to the concert. Afterwards, I went down, and they took my son home because he was just a little guy. And I went to hang out with Mike. Well, we all get into this van with Bon Jovi. And so the first thing they want to do is go to Number 5 Orange. So because that's why the album was called Slippery When Wet, because he used to go watch the strippers after their tracking, right?
Having the shower. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we go down to Number 5 Orange, and then I mean, nothing was going on. It was pretty much closed. We went there for a drink. It was sort of this, so they could reminisce with the owner sort of thing and stuff. And then we get back in the van and we went to Club Soda, and they cordoned off a whole section. It was quite magical. It was a really nice time. They're a good bunch of guys. I thought Richie Sambora was especially a good guy.
Yeah. All that whole band was awesome. To me, the bigger the band, the better people they are. Some of the smaller bands are a little bit more chip on your shoulder, but those big band, I've never run into one guy that's got a giant ego that you're like, oh yeah, he loves himself. Like, they're all sweethearts as far from my experience.
Well, the work ethic to get to that level,
yeah,
you gotta be, I mean, and like they say, you meet the same people on the way up as you do on the way down, so you better be respectful all along.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I remember one time, with the AC/DC guys were in town. Well, it was probably for Fraser's Edge record. And we all go down to Club Soda. And Shirley, Shirley was the manager there or whatever.
Yeah.
The whole area cordoned off and the place was just packed. And Angus and Mal are coming through. And Angus doesn't drink, right? He's never drank or done drugs in his life. Get me out of here or whatever. Oh, come on, Ang. It'll be fun. So going there and Mal's like, oh, what's all this with this velvet cord and all this? Oh, just, to keep you guys. Oh, get rid of it. She says, oh, you sure? Oh, you're going to be, get rid of it. So she gets rid of the cord, and sure enough, everybody comes piling in. But you know what? After about 2 minutes, when they realized they could stand around them and ask them whatever, that mayhem went away. It's almost like that cordon off creates a mayhem that you want to get behind there and get to it. As soon as the cords went away, it just went normal. Everybody went back to the dance floor. Some people, oh, so you're Angus Young, then? Yeah. Oh, nice to meet you. And then, it's sometimes you create this thing where it doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, it's like a dog on a leash. It's like they say, if your dog is being really aggressive on a leash, drop the leash. Yeah. Immediately they just calm right down because they're being aggressive because they feel they have to.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's sort of the same thing with that. If you're creating a barrier, then people feel like, that it's like looking at a zoo or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to be on the other side of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the Roxy was always good for that. I mean, I played at the Roxy House Band for 5 years, and the celebrities would come through that place, and nobody really bothered them. Like they go up and say, hi, can I buy you a drink? Or just sort of Canadian hospitality. I remember George Wendt came in and he stood in front of a pole and watched our whole set. And so I walked up and said, hey, can I buy you a beer? Norm from Cheers, right? Yeah. Can I buy you a beer? He says, no. I said, but I love a B-52. so I went and bought a B-52. It was just great. It's like, and nobody bothered him. He stood there the whole set and watched the band. Not one person bothered him. I think that's what they love about Vancouver. Or at least back then. You're saying it's worse. You're saying it's bad now.
It's the same, but we're getting to be a bigger metropolis, more people, and it's changed a lot from what I've seen, like in the 80s and 90s. But generally, we're not as bad as some of the other bigger towns, around the world. Like, we're still pretty nice and polite here.
Dave Grohl made it to number one. He's the drummer of Nirvana, then he's the frontman, lead singer, songwriter of Foo Fighters. I mean, he made it in two bands in two totally different ways.
He's sort of like the Brady of rock and roll, isn't he?
The what?
The Brady. The Brady of rock and roll.
Yeah, no kidding. So good guy?
Oh, awesome.
Because he comes off as such a regular old Joe.
When you see him in interviews and stuff, and basically he just talks of like Nirvana was this garage band that just got lucky breaks in the way they went. Like, he loves what they're doing, but basically his message to all the little bands and everybody says, don't give up just because you're a garage band. You don't need the big lights and PA to start out. Like, get it and practice and do your songs, and somebody's gonna love them. And he's right. And you can still see that in Dave, the way he plays. He played some drums on the Zach Brown stuff, and the way he sings. He's still a kid. He still loves doing music and whatever it takes. Even when he's in front of the cameras now and doing his documentaries and stuff, he loves being in front of the camera, and not in an egotistical way. He's like a kid. Like, he's so excited to share this with, I want to and show you this, and this is the greatest thing. Like, he is an amazing guy.
Yeah, I admire him, and the fact that you got to work with him and Zach Brown, who I think the Zach Brown band, I think, is one of the greatest bands that's come out in the past 20 years.
Those guys are all so good,
unbelievable,
amazing. And
like the players.
Zach's another guy that just pulls melodies and harmonies. Like, he'll just be sitting there on his guitar and go, "I got an idea," and it's like, holy crap!
Does he exclusively play a nylon-string guitar all the time?
He loves that sound.
Yeah.
For what he does, and then the other guys have their sound, and it kind of mixes together.
Well, it sure works. Good Lord. That stuff. Oh man. There's nothing like cruising in your car listening to Zach Brown. It's just the best kind of music for that sort of, it's great driving music, Yeah,
I know, right?
I just love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of fun and fun lyrics, And it's I've yet to see them live. I got it next time I get a chance.
Oh.
Once we can go to live again.
Yeah. Live? What is live?
Yeah. What is this live you speak of?
Aren't we live right now?
Yeah, this magical live you speak of. Ah, God.
What's your favorite album that you did? What's your number one album you're most proud of?
That's a tough one. Like the Dan Reed was fun, and I thought very innovative. So that was a fun one. We had a lot of fun doing that. Dan and I stayed up, I think it was 7 days straight, no sleep.
Wow.
No drugs, just coffee and cigarettes for 7 days. After the first day and a half, you sort of get into this zone, and then it was just like, so then we said, well, let's just see how long we could do it. So we finished doing all this. Right? And then I remember going home the day. So I'm going home at like 11 a.m. or noon after not sleeping for 7 days. Nice warm day, drive along the freeway. I'm like, oh shit, I don't know if I can make it home. And I made it home, slept for 6 hours. I woke up and then felt like I thought I would literally sleep for 3 days, but slept for 6 hours, woke up and like, oh, okay. But that was a lot of fun. That record, The Blue Murder, was a lot of fun. A band over in London that did a few records with called Thunder were great guys. We golfed and played cricket and hung out, and it was quite an English experience. So that was a lot of fun. So I've got a lot of records that were a lot of fun, and each one has its special moment.
It's interesting because you haven't mentioned any of the big bands. These are other bands that you've actually had more fun with. Why is that? Just because they're at a different stage, or? Maybe so. I don't know. Some of the bigger bands, are there to do the job. And, like I've had a lot of fun with Brian at AC/DC. Him and I went and golfed many, many times, a lot of great dinners. But, I'm just picking off the ones.
But it's possible because those songs from the big acts you hear all the time. And whereas a band like Blue Murder, that was so great and you never hear it. It almost becomes like this little jewel in your back pocket.
Yeah, that could be. It was just there are different periods. Like if you're in there with the Aerosmiths or even the AC/DC guys, and they're lovely guys and great hangout, you're there to do a job. Whereas the Thunder guys were doing a job, but then we'd go, let's knock off early and go have a round of golf, or let's start late tomorrow. Let's go have a round of golf, or we're making it an adventure. And a lot of those records were earlier on where you could do that kind of stuff, and the budgets were bigger, so you weren't too worried about the money the studio's costing you. You're like, hey, let's go have some fun, or let's make tonight a party night and have a bunch of the girlfriends and fans down, or so, whatever reasons, some of the smaller stuff was fun.
Yeah. I don't know if you call me, but I think about, it was maybe a year or so ago, I found this track where Mark sang and played drums, but we'd done a remake of Thunderstruck, and I think I sent it to you. I was trying to do my best Mike Fraser on it, trying to make it sound as big as I could with my equipment. And you were nice. You went, "Hey, that sounds good," but I bet you were going, "What the fuck?"
Yeah, nice one, Mick. Nice one, Mick.
Yeah, thanks. Impress me again.
Funny.
Everybody's got samples, Mick. Shut up.
They better not be my samples.
Yeah, God, I think Bob Rock samples are out there for all the world to pick at. I don't know who's.
It's funny. Sometimes I'll get a project in from some band from wherever in the world, and they'll send me the tracks up, and I'll put it, and they've already put a couple kick samples or a snare sample, and I'll bring it up and go, "Oh, hey, that's me and Bob's kick right there, death kick or what?"
Yeah, the death kick. I remember that one.
Yeah.
What did that death kick? That's got like a long tail on it. It's like it's through some sort of a drum machine as well or something, isn't it?
Rob, I don't even remember anymore, but that's part of the secret, especially through the 80s where everything was way more ambient, is you wanted long tails on them because then you could hide it in the track better. If you had a bit of ambience with the drum and add in a sample, the sample was poo, poo, poo. You could hear it, but if it went poo, poo, you could kind of hide it a little better. So that was kind of the thing there.
Yeah, that made sense. But thank you so much, Mike. This has been
Oh,
great.
thanks, Mike.
Right,
so much, Mike.
Oh, this is going to be such fun, and it has been, man. It's been really great. Yeah,
Yeah, it's awesome.
I've got to say, you also are one of the reasons that I got into this business. Seeing you in Shama and Bo Fiddler days. Do you remember playing the Bo Fiddler?
Oh God, yeah.
So that was me when I was in my band days in 78.
78. That'd be about 78. Yeah.
And seeing you guys up there and just like, holy fuck, I wish I could do this, and knowing I couldn't play like that, so you were part of my inspiration to.
Well, that's really nice to say. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that.
No, it's just really nice. We want to have a chat. I know we've talked before, and we kind of know, but this is the first time we've actually had a sit down and talk for 2.5 hours.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you. That's very kind of you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to tell the boys. Well, you've done some work with Jeff Neal recently, haven't you? Didn't you mix something for Jeff?
Yeah. Did I? Oh.
I could have swore you did. There was something you worked on for Jeff, and I forget what it was. Or maybe no. I think maybe he wanted you to. But I don't
know. There's so many things come across and whatever. I remember, I think the last time I saw him, he was doing the Took show.
Yeah, right.
A year and a half ago, like before. Well, when we could still go live, so whenever that was.
Well, that was cool because Took does some street art stuff, and so they're doing What Kind of Love Is This? Well, What Kind of Love Is This was supposed to be a Shama song.
Really?
Yeah, Jeff had started writing that song in Shama, and then he brought it to Street Art, and that was actually one of the first songs they had that made it to the top 10 that they wrote, because they did Under My Thumb and cover songs, but What Kind of Love Is This was actually their song. Yeah, but it was actually supposed to be a Shama song.
Now,
Wow.
I thought I heard that was done as a demo, and they tried to redo it and couldn't do it, so they used the demo on that too, right?
Yeah, and I had heard a story that Spider played drums on it, but then I heard that was wrong. I think it is Bob Ego on it.
Right. Yeah. I love all the old Canadian history of rock, because it's a handful of people that were doing the music. Like all the guys from Winnipeg with the Randy and them, and the Street Heart guys, and then you guys, and there's just so many crossroads, and everybody's sort of intermingled, and it's fascinating.
Well, there's it's interesting because that's where Took is all about. Like Took being these Canadian guys that are in the States now playing with all these big bands, and they're redoing Canadian songs that the Americans have never heard.
Yeah.
And bringing it to the Americans. Like, look at all these great songs we have,
That's right. Yeah.
So it's great for the songwriters.
They're all Canadian too, so they're allowed to.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's definitely a pedigree there for sure.
Yeah. And nobody down the States knows what a Took is anyway. So.
Exactly.
We talked about that with Corey, yeah.
Corey Chirka was on the show, so we were talking about that a bit. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. Great.
And of course, when Jeff played with two, he was taking Corey's place. I guess Corey must have been out with Kelly Clarkson or something.
I think so. Yeah. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, but thanks a lot, Mike. I really appreciate it. I'll let Scott take it from here. And thanks, buddy.
Oh,
Yeah,
hey, thanks for having me, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure and great.
Thank you, Mike.
And you guys just make it easy and make me look good. Just make sure when you color correct everything.
We'd love to have you back when things are back up and running in the studio and check in on you and see what you're working on next.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd love to.
Awesome.
Down in a second.
Awesome, Mike.
so much, Mike.
That'd be
Take
great,
care,
Mike.
buddy.
Take care. Cheers, buddy.
All right, guys.
Thanks for joining us. Check out our many other episodes and vignettes for more great content. And please like, share, and subscribe, and become a member at SocialNRGpresents.com to access all our content and earn valuable energy points just for watching.